All right. Hey, everybody. My name is Michael Fangman, and I am a product designer for Secure. Today, I'm going to walk you through the evolution of inline security findings and merge requests. Well, I'll share some of the different iterations and versions that inline findings have gone through as we've worked towards the initial release. So first, I just want to start with a little bit of background around the initiative. So work on inline findings actually began back in February of 2001. And this project went through a lot more ebbs and flows and saw more substantial iterations than a typical project. And it actually also passed through the hands of more product managers and product designers than normal as well. So at different points, there were 3 different product managers and 3 different product designers that all had a hand in this initiative at one point. But nevertheless, the core problem of what we're trying to solve has ultimately remained the same. And that is to help developers identify and resolve security issues that are introduced by their code changes. So let's start by looking at the first version of inline security findings. So here's a quick snapshot of that work. And so this proposal was actually put together by Becca Lippert, who was the design lead for it at that time. And what you're seeing here doesn't necessarily demonstrate the full scope and amount of work that went into this proposal. I know Becca spent a lot of time collaborating with different people to put together a really well thought out and practical plan for implementing inline security findings. And from what I can tell, looking back at that issue, the goals of the initiative were to present SAST and secret detection findings within the context of code changes in an effort to hopefully make the triage and remediation process more efficient, and to leverage and expand upon existing functionality of code quality findings to do that. And so Becca started working on this issue while she was the designer on the static analysis team. But after a little bit of a restructure within the secure and govern stage a while back, she moved to Threat Insights and took the issue with her. And then I think after it was at Threat Insights for a while, they determined that they didn't necessarily have the capacity to implement it for some time. So Becca and her PM reached out to myself and Connor, who is the PM for static analysis. Both of us were new to the team at that time, to determine if we could take on this work. And so we committed to taking it on and seeing it through to implementation. And so after the project was handed back to the static analysis team, myself and the engineering team spent some time familiarizing ourselves with the proposal and suggested making a few slight changes to it. So here's an example of that revised proposal. So as you can tell, it looks very similar to the original one that Becca put together, but the changes that we made were simply to simplify some of the technical challenges that were raised by the engineering team and to unbox the UI just a little bit. So after updates were made in the proposal, we started mapping out the plan towards implementation for this. And so we first wanted to update the existing code quality UI to lay the groundwork and foundation, and then move on to implementing inline security findings themselves. And so while mapping out the implementation for inline security findings, I was brought in to work on a KR with Andy Volp to focus on improving the key cross-product workflow. And the workflow that we were choosing to focus on was managing security and quality results in the merge request. And at that time, Andy and I were very mindful about the existing plan for inline security findings and decided to focus our attention on other aspects of the merge request experience. And so we found an opportunity for alignment with the Create UX team at that time, who were working on a proposal for restructuring the merge request experience. And this was really early and speculative work. And specifically, we wanted to help them by fleshing out a new tab focused on servicing and managing automated test results. And really the thought process here is that this would help developers be able to identify and address specific automated results like security and quality issues or pipeline failures that might be blocking a merge request. And so here's a preview of that work, just so you have that context. And as this work progressed on this KR and we're starting to see some really positive feedback from our user tests, I began thinking about how inline findings might align with this concept for the KR. And so I put together sort of a mid-fidelity design vision to demonstrate how inline findings could work in this environment. And so here's a preview of that work. And really the goals here were to explore some of the potential opportunities to improve usability upon the first version of inline findings, thinking about things like, for instance, the vulnerability details modal. Currently, that would open up and overlap the code changes, which made it difficult for users to be able to correlate the finding details with the vulnerable code itself. And also, I wanted to facilitate a more efficient workflows and triage process and just align this proposal with the KR itself. And unfortunately, the design vision here was really short-lived and never really saw the light of day, because it was determined that the MR restructure initiative would not move forward. And so the work that Andy and I did on the KR around creating an MR reports tab was also impacted by that decision. And ultimately, the direction that we received is that there was a lot of good work in what we did, but adding a net new tab to the merge request experience wasn't necessarily an ideal direction to pursue at that time. And users would be better served by integrating aspects of the design proposal into the existing merge request experience instead. And so because of this, we decided to reshift our focus on enhancing the review of security findings within the changes tab itself. And so Andy and I created a new KR around this work and then found ourselves in a situation where that new KR actually directly impacted the original plan for inline security findings. And so we made sure the static analysis team was informed about this potential impact and then continued work on the KR. And so here is a preview of the outcome of that second KR. And some of the goals that we were working towards is to leverage some of the major concepts and ideas that were established in the first KR and integrate them into the merge request experience. So thinking about how we can integrate findings into the diff instead of a net new area, how we can increase visibility of those findings in the diff. And then we also wanted to give users flexibility and control over those inline findings to help them be able to focus and prioritize on the most important findings to them and their organization, and then reduce some of the noise that were created by non-critical findings. So one of the bigger challenges that we faced while working on this initiative was how to handle findings that aren't directly related to code changes. So certain tools like SAST, secret detection, and code quality, all of those findings can be directly related to the code itself. But there are other tools that can run in merge requests like DAST and fuzz testing, for instance, where the results of those aren't necessarily directly correlated to specific lines of code. And there really wasn't a great mechanism for highlighting these findings. We did have the merge request security widget, but we knew that this wasn't an ideal experience for users. And so thinking about the direction that we were given and the preference towards not introducing a net new area to the merge request page, we opted to integrate these findings into the changes tab as well. And so we pursued that direction and finalized our design proposal for this KR. And then shortly thereafter, I went on parental leave and wasn't really involved in all the discussions and actions that were taken thereafter. But ultimately, it was determined that the proposal wasn't going to move forward in this current form. And from what I understand, key stakeholders had lower confidence in the idea of introducing findings that aren't directly related to code changes into the MR changes tab, which does make a lot of sense. And that there were too many large interdependent changes being proposed to the changes tab that would make it more challenging to implement. And so while I was out on leave, another designer from a different stage group was actually pulled in to put together a smaller MVC proposal for inline findings. And I can't really speak too much to the background of that around that work, but it seems like that proposal tried to leverage some of the main ideas that we used within the KR and really focus on establishing the minimum viable changes needed to finally ship inline security findings. And so here's a preview of that work. And this is the proposal that the static analysis team is currently moving forward with. So I want to say thank you to Annabelle from the UX Paper Cuts team. She did this work and did an awesome job with it. She established a really solid foundation that we can build upon. And that foundation is actually really in line with the direction that I had in mind for inline security findings. So I really love to see that. So this direction is currently in development, and we're hoping to have this shipped by the end of the year. But there are a few technical challenges and decisions that may impact that timeline. And so that's where we're at today, but naturally I can't help but look forward to where we want to be tomorrow. So after coming back from leave and catching up on all the work that had been done, I spent some time and put together a new proposal for the next iteration of inline findings based on the work that Annabelle did. And so here's a preview of that work. And as you can tell, it's very similar to the work that Annabelle had done with just some optimizations. So really, this is still in the design phase, and so we'll likely see a little bit more change to it. But the goals of this proposal is just to establish closer alignment with the existing UI for vulnerability details in the application. So thinking about like the vulnerability details page and how information is presented there, we wanted to sort of achieve some sort of parity and present information in a very similar way so that anytime a user is interacting with vulnerabilities in the application, the information is presented in a consistent manner. And we're also hoping to make this process a little bit more efficient by tweaking some of the UX to optimize the workflows a little bit better to hopefully help with the triage and remediation process. And so that's essentially where we're currently at and where we're planning to go next with inline security findings. It's really exciting that we finally have a path towards shipping this feature. And as you can tell, it's been kind of a long road to get to this release, but I don't think the journey is really over yet. In fact, I really think it's just beginning. So there's still a lot we can do to help users identify and resolve security issues that were introduced by their code changes, thinking about how we can better connect security policy enforcement into the experience, increase the visibility of other findings that aren't directly related to code changes, and allowing for better finding or collaboration on findings as a whole. So in addition to continuing to improve the inline finding experience, myself and Justin Mendel have been working on putting together a proposal for forming a design pod that's going to be focused on improving other aspects of security in the merge request experience. And so this initiative is really just getting underway and still needs buy-in from a few key stakeholders as well as potential participants. But there's a lot of opportunity to make a big impact here. So if this design pod does move forward, we're planning to work really closely with key stakeholders so that the outcome provides a viable and valuable improvement to the merge request experience. And so here's the issue for that. So please check it out. And if you want to be involved in it or interested in learning more, feel free to reach out to myself or Justin Mendel. Really looking forward to seeing how we can continue to improve security in the merge request experience. And I hope you are too. Thank you. And any questions that people have, happy to take them now. The agenda. It's like no current questions. Considering the small audience, I'm not surprised by that. All right.
I guess I'll jump in, Michael. Yeah. So yeah, thanks for sharing. I think it's pretty cool to see the different phases. So maybe more a comment than a question. And I really like, I think the way that you simplified this, because there's so much complexity happening in in this whole part of the product and the nuances of it. So it's pretty cool to see how you picked it up and transition that work. So no real question in there. It's just I like to see that, you know, how you've taken it from where it started to where it's gotten, and so yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Jeremy. Appreciate that comment. It's been a long road, but it's been really fun. It's like Becca, you're typing out a comment right now too.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, like, I'm super impressed with where this has landed, and it's definitely an improvement from my first iterations on it. But this is so needed. I mean, literally every time I talk to security engineers, it's all about this shifting left. So I just wanted to really drive home with everybody how important this initiative is within secure and govern, because it's unscalable. The amount of vulnerabilities that come into the vulnerability report, and we're doing what we can on the vulnerability report to help them group and triage and prioritize there, but really it's the only way that this is a scalable process is to get developers involved with triaging their own security findings, especially when it's derived by their code, as Michael said, like with SAST and secret detection. So it's super, super important that developers start getting involved with this process more. And the way that it's currently implemented in the product, we just don't make it easy at all, because there's such a disconnect between the code that they wrote, which you can view on the changes tab, and the security information being presented in a modal on the overview tab. So there's such a disconnect there. I just wanted to stress how important this is, that we start to integrate the code with security findings. And my first round of solution validation got really good feedback, even from developers who can see these kind of things as a blocker. But especially the designs that I've seen where they could filter by scanner type and severity, will help them just at least focus on the critical ones. And I know Camellia is doing some awesome work when it comes to security policies that may be blocking the merge requests from being merged. So really, really exciting stuff. I just wanted to say really good job. And not only is the design complex and having to work with you know, the create team and whatever's on their roadmap, but also just the bureaucracy or political decisions within the company. I mean, it's really hard to be working on something and then it loses momentum and it gets put aside for a little bit and then pick it back up and going between different designers. So I mean, this was just like a really tough one. And I just want to say kudos to you, Michael. It's so exciting to see how far this has come and you've done a great job with it.
Thank you, Becca. Kudos to you too for building a great foundation to build upon.
Thank you.
Cool. All right, so I'll go ahead and stop the recording.